What happens if the creator of such bangers as Mahou Shoujo Madoka Magica, Psychopaths, and Fate Zero decides to create a Lovecraftian horror love story with text on the same level as some of the most infamous works of art out there? You are Sakisaka Fuminori, an ordinary student whose life goes every day on the same loop. Every day, you wake up from alarm, do morning routine. Your parents drive you to the university, where you study your medical degree. On lunch breaks, you meet your friends and hang out together. Then you go home to study more, and finally go to sleep. You wake up from alarm, do your morning routine. Your parents drive you, get hit by a car. But instead of isekai into a fantasy world of sword and magic, and totally legal catgirl slaves who for some reason love you to death, you suffer a cerebral contusion, and now you're in near-death condition. Light blinks in and out of your vision. You see blurry figures mumbling something. Maybe they're talking to you and asking you questions? You can't be sure. Many moments of fading in and out of consciousness. You barely open your eyes in the hospital, and are told that you have a severe case of subdural hematoma. Your chances of survival are slim. However, there is a new experimental procedure which can save your life. Left with no choice, you agree to it. Waking up after surgery, the world seems wrong. You can't open your eyes yet, which you believe is a blessing in disguise, as you for sure will praise otherwise. Everything smells, sounds, tastes, feels weird and just off somehow. As if you were punished and sent to some hellscape nightmare, you hear incomprehensible sounds comprised of growls and screeches. You're lying in a squishy mass of flesh, and there are, for the lack of better word, monsters who are stuffing you with rancid sludge, which who knows where they got from. Quite predictably, you completely freak out from everything that is happening to you. So, for your efforts, they submerge you in a cradle made of flesh, not allowing you any movement. But this nightmare does not end. Eventually, you start to realize that you are not in hell. These monstrous blobs of flesh feeding you with disgusting gruel? Probably nurses and doctors, observing your condition and taking care of you. The mass of meat you're lying in? A hospital bed, most likely. The right shape, the right placement. Still feels like a flesh, but better taste. And screeches and growls you hear from medical personnel? You're finally able to distinguish words in it, if you really focus. You hear stories about other patients going crazy or insane, and being locked up to further research their condition. So, you pretend normal. As normal as a person who recently lost parents in a traffic accident could be. So some of your past crazy behavior is forgiven. But this nightmare does not end. Until one day, you see a girl, a normal, human girl, surrounded and still unfamiliar to you hellscape of flesh, fat and veins.
怖くないの？私のこと。
She asks you with confused expression. You see nothing to be afraid of in her appearance, savoring the first peace and joy since regaining your sight. Monstrous hellscape still envelops Fuminori's senses. We don't know if there is anything left from his sanity, as novel starts with some monstrous creatures bubbling something, with some barely distinguishable words appearing in between their ramblings. However these creatures look, they are my friends, apparently. Fuminori tries his best every day to pretend to be with them mentally, to avoid arousing suspicion that he is still insane. He no longer is connected with his friends, as their sole presence repulses him. Not only his friends, but the whole world is twisted beyond recognition, destroying any sense of normalcy Fuminori had in his life. Skiing trips with his buddies, on which we went every winter break, would instead be akin sliding on a mountain of flesh, while his legs would be enveloped in more gorish mass. To keep pretending like everything is normal would be an impossible task. Story cuts to the perspective of one of Fuminori's friends, Ya. Peaceful music plays in the background, while we warmly discuss spending time on their winter break. Contrast with Fuminori's world is not only abrupt, it's so deeply disturbing. While characters can see the difference, we can. They live in completely different worlds. For them, it is normal. It is a good place to live, with warm and tasty food, predictable and stable future, no sense of danger from the risk of being discovered. Living is not easy, of course. We all see how a friend struggles to come back to normalcy after the traffic incident, but life still continues. But Fuminori's world is opposite. How does one stay even remotely sane in such a world? I realized one day that if natural colors of the world were sickening, all I had to do was paint over them with colors that seemed pleasant. Saya, the little girl with skin a little too pale to be normal, and slightly unusual hair. For some reason, she is the only person in the whole world who appears normal to Fuminori, the last glimmer of normalcy and hope in the twisted hellscape. With money left from his parents, Fuminori is able to live alone in his house with his new companion. Companions in more ways than one may expect. What was the age of consent in Japan again? FBI, open up! Fuminori even eats the food she cooks from culinary shows on TV. The taste is gut-wrenching, of course, for no fault of Saya, but also feels like some horrific sludge, even if cooked perfectly. However, Saya has never ate with Fuminori together. Maybe such food is not up to her palate? They're together, as they are both alone in this world. Saya also lost her parents, although it was her father, Dr. Ogai, who developed the procedure for Fuminori's treatment. He has gone missing a while ago. Now I know, no matter what horrors this world unleashes upon me, all I will ever need is Saya. But while Fuminori is the protagonist of the story, other characters are also living their lives. Ya, one of Fuminori's friends, has confessed her love to him shortly before the accident. She is pained by the distance Fuminori created between them, and so, gathering her determination, she decides to finally confront Fuminori. Worse he can say is no, right? Her attractive body, her monstrous mass of flesh, her cute mouth, shyly speaking, her mouth spitting acid and vomit, and words, horrific gurgles and screeches. Fuminori makes him finally snap.
筑波さん、僕はあんたのことが大嫌いだ。顔も見たくない。だからせめて今後は僕に声をかけないでくれないか？目障りなんだよ、つくづく。
With cold hate in his voice, Fuminori gives her his answer. Ome was the first to catch sight of Yo leaving the courtyard, and she heard the whole exchange. Koji, her boyfriend, held her back from beating Fuminori right on the spot, but hearing her best friend being rejected like this, she still wants to give Fuminori a piece of her mind. Literally, as it turns out. Ome goes to Fuminori's house. The grass around his yard is grown wild, and leaves are scattered everywhere. It doesn't just look untended, it looks like an uninhabited ruin. The door was not locked, so she enters. The stench like rotten fish guts assault her nostrils, and in human voice, with some words barely distinguishable in it, greets her ears. It seems Somi has not learned anything from horror movies, as she decides to enter this house. The floor in the kitchen is covered in viscous green slime, like filthy water from a clogged tank. The source of stench, but not the voice she heard. Omi starts to regret her decision to enter the house. The kitchen is where the noise came from, but she can't see anyone in here. However, turning her back to the darkness is even more impossible than staying here, so she walks forward, into the black room, where windows are shattered and even more repulsive smells come from. She flips the light switch on. The colors. The purple of entrails, the black of brown meat, the crimson of fresh blood, the yellow of fat. These colors cover every surface of the room, as if Matt Painter expressed the hate and malice to the world through his insane medium. Omi falls from the shock on the cold, wet and slimy floor. In making perhaps the worst decision of her life, Oni looks up. That day, Minoru enters his house a little later than usual. In his room, he sees Sai eating something on the floor, described in game as grass, fruits and vegetables in strange shapes. Don't know about you, but this doesn't look like fruits to me. However, without any second thoughts, Fuminori also decides to eat the delicious fruit. At first, Saya looks dumbstruck, but then she bursts out laughing. Turns out there was no need to overthink their diet. I feel that, little by little, I'm starting to regain the joys of living. Says Fuminori, thinking about how unknowingly he just stayed out his best friend's girlfriend. But of course, the disappearance of a person does not go unnoticed. Before, Fuminori was just a crazy person. Now, a criminal, with no way out. Not seeing Omi and Fuminori for 3 days, Koji, who knew about his partner's desire to visit Fuminori, wonders what really happened, and decides to follow him after university. Stalking Fuminori to the train station, and then following him into some small town, he sees him entering an unfamiliar house without knocking. Checking the nameplate in front of the house, it says Ogai. Koji has never heard of anyone by that name, and hasn't heard Fuminori mention them even once. What could his friend do in an unknown location, some decrepit building? The worst case scenarios are constantly flashing one after another in Koji's mind, leaving him tense, almost in a fight-or-flight condition. He decides to wait until Fuminori leaves the house, but hour after hour continue to pass, without him exiting. One pack of cigarettes later, in twilight hours, Fuminori finally emerges from the house and heads to the station. Koji decides to investigate what's going on. Carefully, he checks out room after room of the uninhabited house and finds a study with, forgive my French, created as chiffres and Ars Magna et Ultima amongst many medical books, as well as Voynich manuscript. Interestingly, those books come from the real world, created as chiffres, covers mathematics and probability. Ars Magna et Ultima is a philosophical work which combines many science fields in an attempt to bring them all together to describe the world. But Voynich manuscript is quite different. Dated back to the early 15th century, it contains sections about herbology, astronomy, balneology, cosmology, and pharmacy, along with a few recipes. However, it's still not decoded even until now with all resources we have available, as it was written in an unknown script, referred as Voyniches. Koji can't help but wonder, what is the reason for a doctor to read such books? His mind starts to consider paranormal scenarios, on top of intrusive thoughts it has already conjured. After finding and picking up a flashlight left by Fuminori, he also notices dark, oily stains everywhere. Very tense, imagining all possible horrors what could be awaiting him in the house, he continues to check room after room, afraid to find something horrible at any turn. Until he gets to the bathroom and witnesses a mountain of small bones, black with dry flesh and blood in it. Not humans. These bones are probably from cats or dogs. How many animals did it took to gather it? With thoughts clashing in his mind, Koji hears a voice behind him.
どうしたコウジ
Fuminori asks calmly. And after a short confrontation, during which Koji starts to understand that perhaps there is no more Fuminori he once knew, they part their ways. On the way home, Fuminori encounters his neighbor, Suzumi, who gently reminds him of his unkept yard and even offers his help to clean it. Damned Snow, worried that the unsightliness of my house might diminish the image of his own, thought Fuminori. This stench should literally be classified as biohazard, thought Suzumi. Fuminori comes home, however, there is no sight of Saya anywhere. Extremely tense, feeling that something went wrong, Fuminori paces around trying to distract himself. Late in the night, Saya finally comes back and drops all of his medical records, which he stole from the hospital, and begins to study them. Confused from this situation, Fuminori decides to wait for her to explain. And, somehow understanding everything written in complex terms from his records, she announces that it's obvious that human doctors can't help Fuminori, but with some experiments, she can. And when they fuck again? I guess stress really got to Fuminori. The next day, Suzumi, as usual, enters his study sharply at 2 o'clock. He knows about everything in his house, down to the smallest detail, and does everything according to his daily regime. His house is perfect. But then, he felt a breeze. Instantly he understands that this is impossible, as all the windows are closed since the morning cleaning. Searching for some time, he comes into his living room. In it, the stench of fetid swamp from Fuminori's house assaults his nostrils, as well as eldritch monstrosity, which in turn assault his mind. Committing definition of mindfuck with tentacles in a bundle, this creature makes Yosuke lose his consciousness. He wakes up in the nightmare which somehow looks familiar to us as readers, but is absolutely horrifying to Yosuke. Flashes ripping around him, as if he was inside of some monster. This unfamiliar place terrifies him. But slowly, he notices something. The most terrifying thing to him. This hellish place, as if mocking him, has the same layout as his house. Lashing out on everything, Yosuke begs to be released from this nightmare. But even pain from broken easel can't wake him up. For the first time in his life, Suzumi prays. Yosuke trembles at the blood-curdling sound of the monster. Hearing something slithering up the stairs, he grabs his broken easel made of bone, ready to defend himself from the monsters. Like an ambush hunter, he plunges it into the throat of the fleshy creature the moment it came into his view, putting his full weight behind the strike. And for the first time, he hears it scream. Feeling hot blood of victory in him, he pushes forward and lashes out at the monster, killing it. Seeing the second, smaller creature hiding near the corner, he rushes at it in his savage bloodlust, not letting it escape. He brings his stake down and down at it, until there is nothing left but shredded, pulverized meat. This way, Suzumi killed his wife and child. Monsters are slayed, but he is still in the nightmare. Suzumi steps outside, only to witness hell. The sky, the city, the nature, everything has gone mad. And then, he meets Saya, the only beautiful thing left in the hellscape. But for some unknown to probably any human on Earth reason, he decides to rape her. The game reasoning for it? Out of sadism awakened in him, and probably all the madness he witnessed. Going on a small tangent, honestly, an abundance of hentai content can probably be explained with this novel release date. From my knowledge, In 2003, the formula of successful visual novels was basically to make it an RPG, with no regard if there should be or shouldn't be any adult content at all. And eroge with a shock factor like Saya no Uta? Give me two. But let's get back to the story. Upon coming home and hearing Saya whimpering his name, Fuminori goes full into Doomslayer mode, grabs a cleaver next to the sink and slashes with fury at the monster, almost instantly killing it. He laments that this creature died too soon, so still full with rage, he continues to hack the corpse into strings and pieces. Comforting Sai immediately after, she tells him that it was her fault. She messed up with Suzumi's brain and make him see the world like Fuminori does, further cementing to viewers what hell Fuminori goes through on everyday basis. Sai reveals that she can change bodies of other living beings in the moment of her birth. But to make changes, she has to study in detail every new organism. But why? Asks Fuminori, and Sai says the most innocent and wholesome reason imaginable.
そうすればみんな文則みたいに私に優しくしてくれるようになるかと思って。
At this moment, Sai is my whole world, and I am hers. The earth turns for us alone. Filled with emotions, Fuminori starts to give voice to his thoughts and feelings. But before he is able to finally confess his deep love to Saya, she stops him. Because now, after experimenting with Suzumi's brain, she is able to change people's brain as well. Which means she can change Fuminori and make him see the world like normal people do. And now the novel presents us with the first choice we can make as a reader, besides exiting the game of course. Do we want to go back to normal or stay like this forever? But it is also not hard to understand something. Saya is obviously not a human, and the way normal people perceive her, based on their reactions upon seeing her, is the same way Fuminori sees everyone else. The way Fuminori sees the world is like a hell, but in this hell he has Saya, a single source of light. The way others see Fuminori is as an anomaly, something broken in their perfect worlds. Almost like yin and yang, right? So, if you would decide to go back to normal, you would join others in seeing the world as something perfect. But then, what place would Saya take in it? Of imperfection. She would become another anomaly in the perfect world, which usually makes sense. Your vision would join those of other people's, forfeiting your love for the sense of normalcy. The other route is to reject normal world and stay like this forever. To be together with Saya, through thick and thin, and stand against the world of people until the end. The path of emotion and love, but rejection of everything else that makes us humans. As the first route is shorter, I will cover it in this video, and the second one in the second part of the series. And, as if mocking me for choosing the first route, this is the first sentence upon choosing it. Well, of course, I answer without thinking. If it's possible to go back, then I want to, I think. Filled with hesitation, Fuminori answers. And without letting him express uncertainty in his mind, Saya kisses him and puts him to sleep. Later, Fuminori calls police on himself and cries upon hearing a voice other than Saya's. He was charged with murder of Suzumi and Omi, but as there was no explanation for the death of his family, those charges were added to his case as well. Fuminori tells the truth about what had happened, but no one, except one unnamed doctor, believes him, and he is placed in a single-person cell with white walls. White color, which he hasn't seen since the accident. Nobody heard anything about Saya, as she never was a part of their world. But although she was part of his, he is also destined to never see her again. Until one night, he awoke to the sound of something crawling down the hallway. It doesn't take him long to recognize the presence of Saya, even if she doesn't talk nor appear before him, hiding behind the steel door of his cell. Saya communicates to him through messages on the cell phone, and despite Fuminori's desire to see her and listen to her voice once more, she just passes him a phone with a message on it. Please, just let me stay the Saya you remember. Saya couldn't bring herself to take everything from me, and I couldn't bring myself to give up on everything for her. We were too weak to find happiness. This way, Saya will continue her attempts to find her dad, in hopes of him sending her back home. And Fuminori will continue finishing his lifelong sentence forever alone in his white walled cell, waiting to one day hear back from Saya.